Hey guys, welcome back to Telltale. I'm Emily.
I'm Greg.
And we are going to be talking about A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin, which we finally got Greg to read. Yay! One of my faves.
Yes. Emily has already done a 2-part video.
I was trying to do a 24-hour read, which I suck at because I'm such a busy person.
Well, it was a very different video, but it wasn't like we normally do or we normally discuss it. So there's a lot more about this that we can talk about. But of course, I never read it. And here's the deal. A Wizard of Earthsea is fantasy. When I was young, I didn't read fantasy. Even something that was clearly science fiction but seemed to involve fantasy, I wouldn't read it. If it had dragon in the title, I wouldn't read it.
Wizard? No, thank you.
Nope, magic, go away.
Not about that. Science fiction.
It had to be science fiction, stuff. I wanted space, I wanted science,
Laser
I
guns,
wanted math, I wanted
aliens.
I was very much into science, and so I wasn't willing to read fantasy. And then once I did read Lord of the Rings and started getting into fantasy a little bit, well, A Wizard of Earthsea was supposed to be a kid's book. That's what I always heard about it, young adult. Well, young adult, when I was younger, meant they were all called juvenile.
10 and up.
Yeah, so it's like you were in detention if you read this book.
Yes. All right.
So it just, I didn't think it was going to be anything I was interested in, because by that time I was more interested in Ballard and Aldous and Ellison and more adult type writers, and didn't want to read anything that was for young adult audience. I even got rid of all my Paul Anderson because that seemed a little too young. Space opera.
And here I am collecting it now.
No, Paul Anderson is great. I wish I wouldn't have gotten rid of all those, but as a matter of fact, I've been getting a bunch of them back from used sources. But I went through that period where I wanted something more.
I need something more high literature.
Adult. And purged my collection of stuff that was at all juvenile. Even some like Isaac Asimov and Robert Heinlein. So anyway, I just never, ever read any of the Earthsea books. And so then we get together, and it's one of her favorites, and she keeps telling me, you should really try it. You probably will like it.
The whole series is great. It's a great series.
And well, since we started Telltale, we've just been so busy with different things. But I finally just bit the bullet this summer, and I bought this huge. And it's such a nice book, and it's only, you can get it for like $33 off Amazon right now. It's a really well done hardbound edition with everything Earthsea.
And it's illustrated.
Illustrated. And it has all the short stories, and it has some essays, and it has a nice ribbon bookmark sewn in. Beautiful artwork on it. It's an awesome book. But Samantha was complaining because she couldn't hold it in bed.
Oh, because it's so big.
You pretty much have to put it on a table.
It is a wrist workout. And honestly, we've complained about books for that very reason before, being poorly designed because they are so big and heavy. But yes.
Well, this is actually very well designed. It's it is just big and heavy, so you're not, putting it in your bag and reading it at the beach or
mean, I've done it with really big books.
But it has, good leading, nice wide margins, good typography. It lays open flat. Everything that I look for in a book like this. It's an awesome book. So I broke down, bought this, and decided to read A Wizard of Earthsea. I'm going to get through the whole thing, but for now, just the first book. And I got Samantha to read it with me because I wanted somebody to buddy read with.
Yeah, since I've already read it a million times.
You've already read it once very recently. You didn't want to join in. So I conned her into reading it with me. And, the short explanation is we both loved it.
Which I knew you would. So I'm going to kind of start first without going into the synopsis. I had not encountered this book until high school. And it was because I was reading Sabriel by Garth Nix for like the 4th time in high school. And I happened to be at youth group at my grandparents' church when I was reading some because I was just not feeling very social. And Pastor Brad came up to me and he goes, "What you reading?" And I'm telling him about it and stuff. And he's like, "I think you'd really enjoy the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin." And I was like, "I've never heard of that." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, if you ever get around to it, go ahead and read it." Lo and behold, for that Christmas from my grandparents, I got the entire series. So thanks, Pastor Brad, for telling my grandparents to get it because it's one of my favorites. So I actually read it for the first time in high school.
Okay.
And Wizard of Earthsea was a great introduction.
So, is it a lot like Sabriel?
Not really.
Okay.
Fantasy elements, perhaps. It's
Well,
kind of
yeah.
of course, with the... It really... Sabriel and that whole Aberson Garth Nix series is actually pretty original, especially for the magic construct and, like, systems and matrices and that sort of thing, and how necromancers and the Aberson interact with the world, even though they have the same abilities, they have different purposes, kind of thing. This one is kind of your typical dark academia fantasy, where you've got a wizard who goes to wizard school. But it's more than that.
Harry Potter it is not.
No, Harry Potter it is not. There is a lot going on in this. A lot of inner darkness to be faced, a lot more so than external darkness, like there is in Harry Potter. Well, internal darkness that becomes external darkness in a lot of respects.
Yeah, that's what the whole book is about. Most fantasy you have, wars between countries, where there's big battles, and it's very much external physical violence going on, external physical conflict, and then you have dragons and magic and in with it.
Things.
This one is very much internal. The conflict is about the, first of all, the jealousy of the character. I forget his name.
Sparrowhawk.
Mm-hmm. He's got this other older kid in his classes that is just being a total ass towards him 100% of the time.
And he knows he's talented because he's just had a natural talent since he was young. In fact, a lot of the early like maybe first two chapters is his young life and discovering he has these powers and kind of getting full of himself.
Yeah. So, but just anybody in that situation, have somebody that's just constantly nagging at you, trying to push your buttons. Eventually they're going to hit one of them and you're going to haul off and clock him one or something,
or snap a little, like
in the
as
case
happens.
Of Sparrowhawk, he just reached a point where he felt he had to prove himself, and he did something he shouldn't have done and brought something over from
somewhere,
like a spirit world, some kind of shadow that was actually part of himself.
Yes. He brought out I like to think of it as he took out his inner darkness from the jealousy of that situation and basically let it wreak havoc on the world.
So yeah, any Star Wars fans that are sitting there going, well, this sounds a lot like Anakin Skywalker.
Dark side.
In a way it is.
I mean, you can't avoid it sometimes.
Way better than episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars.
For sure. I'd even say some of the others, too. I mean, they're good episodes, but dialogue-wise, this is better.
Yeah. So, once this thing is out, the rest of the book is about, at least book 1. I haven't read 2 or 3 or 4 yet. The rest of it is about Sparrowhawk battling with this shadow that he loosed into the world.
And trying to figure out how to either put it back or defeat it or what he needs to do.
And, that part in itself illuminates a lot about us. We all have this dark side. We all battle with it our entire lives. And we all have to try to figure out methods of containing it and dealing with it.
Yes.
Because it doesn't go away.
Because we all contain 2 wolves. Mine happens to be, I'm hungry, and the other is, I don't know what I want to eat. Within us is all his 2 wolves. Have you seen that meme?
No.
It's like Native American tradition says, within us there are 2 wolves. One is supposed to be dark and the other is supposed to be light, and they're constantly fighting with each other. And then there's other memes too where it's like, in me are two wolves. I want to be warm, but I want to be cold and warmed by a blankie. Like, it's just these really, like, petty, stupid inner conflicts that humans typically have that are kind of funny and make us what we are and adorable. But
Easy solution
yes,
to the eating one is Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yep, just always have
chocolate
a Reese's.
and peanut butter.
It's perfect. Together.
Yes.
Yes. Grab a Reese's.
But no, that is good. But it is true that we all kind of have that dark side of us, and that's something a lot of people forget when they're judging authors, that authors have at some time lost control of themselves and said something regrettable,
yes.
and then because of the internet today, the rest of the
Cancel
world
culture.
damns them for forever,
yes.
for making one comment even though they normally wouldn't say such a thing.
Me? You never know. But that is how some people feel. And I was like, I've decided that not every opinion in my life is relevant, and I have done what I feel I need to do. But I also recognize that if I stopped like reading or boycotted everything that involved a person that did something I thought was wrong, I wouldn't have anything left to enjoy. So...
Well, and we need, for democracy to exist, we need a pool of dissenting opinions that we all listen to. Key point is listen to them.
Yes.
You have to consider the alternatives to the way you think.
Easier said than done.
Oh, it's very difficult, but but in order for democracy to succeed, you have to, and you have to weigh those. And it's by pooling all those ideas and talking about it and discussing it and trying to find common grounds and working toward compromises. That's how democracies can function as a government.
Yes.
Without that, it completely falls apart, and you're going down the road towards some kind of dictatorship.
With absolutism.
Yeah.
And totalitarianism.
Where one person says everybody's going to think this way or you die. You know, you don't want that.
Yeah.
And so you have to have those dissenting opinions, even if you don't agree with somebody. You have to defend their right to say it and to lobby it.
Yeah. And I'll be real, I don't even remember how we got on this topic from this.
Well,
can you backtrack it? Because I can't remember
because
where we were.
we all have some darkness. And
yes, we do all have
in our world
darknesses.
right now, a lot of people are being severely criticized
That's
for
right. That's
mistakes.
where we got to.
Not because they have this lifelong, and that's where I made the mistake. Okay, she was the wrong example, but there are examples of people who have been condemned for making one statement that people generally disagree with.
And blown out of proportion.
Yeah, it gets blown way out of proportion, and the person really isn't a bad person, and so their work should not be.
And there isn't a human in life who isn't misguided at some point.
Exactly, we all make mistakes.
And honestly, like, duality has been the major function of storylines for so long. I mean, even when you think about Greek myths and things like that, the gods and goddesses all have things wrong with them too. They're no different than people, and yet they're deities. You know, so like this duality conversation has gone on even into the infrastructure of religions.
And another good example is in the 1930s, most intellectuals, writers, artists, joined the Communist Party.
Yeah.
Because they thought it would be a good thing. They thought communism would, they didn't know Stalin yet. Okay. And, that's another whole conversation whether or not Stalin was true communism or what. But, the intellectuals of that time, they joined the socialist or communist parties because they did feel that, well, at that time unions were being formed, the working class was trying to get out from under very poor working conditions in factories. And the socialist and communist parties supported those ideas. They were saying they were for the working man. Well, so for a brief time, and a lot of science fiction authors were among them, they were card-carrying communists.
Yep.
Well, along comes the 1950s and the McCarthy hearings, and all these guys are being hauled into court,
Yeah. Blacklisted,
as if they
or
are
red-listed.
selling the whole country to the Soviet Union,
Mm-hmm.
and they really weren't. They too, like the United States, they left the Communist Party.
Mm-hmm.
They're not part of that anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and so they shouldn't have continued to be condemned, but they were, because they had that affiliation with communists at one time, and so they're just marked for life.
Yes.
And need to be blacklisted.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we're heading down that road again.
Yeah, and I feel
Not about communism, but about sexism and racism, where you make a comment that somebody doesn't like, and all of a sudden an author is just blacklisted is canceled and blacklisted for life.
Yeah.
By the new McCarthyism.
And here's what I don't like about that is that, one, it doesn't leave room for authentic change in the person
Right.
who's committed the thing. Like, if they actually were serious when they said something insensitive, then blacklisting them and forcing consequences upon them is not going to give them a chance to authentically change. It's going to force a change because they feel like in order to get some semblance of their life back, they have to change something or rebrand or apologize or whatever. So it doesn't give them an authentic chance to be like, wow, I really was wrong, and let life actually, like, it's an artificial change. It's not an authentic one.
And I bring it up because it is relevant to this, because Sparrowhawk does make that mistake and brings out something that is really, really dark that could destroy the world. And
because he was a moody teenager.
It takes him a bit, but then he realizes that he did, and that it's from him, and that he needs to fix this.
Yes.
And so then
he spends a lot of time running,
novel,
only to realize I need to stop running and go find this thing and stop it if I can.
And people can be that way. They can make mistakes. They can say things that they later on will see they were wrong, and they can then at least try to change. And those people should not be condemned.
Yes. There was this guy on the internet a while back, and I can't remember who he was or something, but I remember he was in the suicide forest in Japan, and he happened to make a joke, because it is a dark and scary place and it is uncomfortable, but he made a joke which was insensitive. But, like, nervous laughter is a normal psychological thing. When you're scared and stuff, like, you see it on ghost hunting shows all the time. When someone gets scared, they don't always scream. Sometimes they laugh or chuckle or like, oh man, that was weird. That was nuts. And like just trying to laugh it off to comfort themselves. That's a normal thing. But he ended up getting super canceled for it, and he apologized and stuff, but he's never had the viewership he once had. I don't even think he's on YouTube anymore.
Wow.
Or doing video stuff anymore. But like, I think because it was the suicide forest, and suicide being such a touchy subject for people, but to have it is a psychological response for people to laugh when they're dealing with tragedy or really uncomfortable, scary things. Like, a lot of people are told their loved ones have died by police, and police are confused and like suspicious because they laughed, because they thought it was a joke, because their brain couldn't psychologically wrap around the fact that someone was gone right away. So, like, yeah, cancel culture and stuff like that is stupid.
Yeah, well, I mean, it starts from a place that is rational, of wanting to make positive changes and get rid of bad behaviors, and stop anything that might reinforce continuing bad behavior.
Yes.
But when it gets carried on to the point, I mean, there comes
people
a point
are getting death threats suddenly.
There comes a point where you have McCarthy hearings, and all of a sudden you've gone too far.
Yes.
And things are not in a good place.
Yes.
And people are being condemned.
And mob mentality is taking over. Like, gosh, what's her name? Kiki Cannibal. She was one of the first really severe cyberbullying cases. Because she was a girl on MySpace who just did not pay attention to who was following her, what. She just accepted everybody. She dated a guy. She broke up with a guy. A guy was unstable. He committed suicide, and the internet just shed on her. And to this day, her and her family can't be employed, because wherever she goes, people are still blaming her for the death of her ex-boyfriend. who's not a great guy either, from what the story says. There's a whole thing in Rolling Stones about it.
Okay.
But, like, yeah. It was
Well, and
nuts.
I'm one who hates bullying, but there again, yeah. If somebody
It just
can
was more
change.
fun to hate her than to love her, is really what it ends up being. And it's
Yeah.
stupid. It's mob mentality taking over because it's fun to make fun of someone.
But they're bullying themselves.
Exactly.
They're becoming bullies themselves.
Exactly. And they don't care. People don't care.
Yeah.
They're no better. They're no better
Yeah.
if they're ruining lives
But
like that other person's ruining lives.
If you become a bully towards somebody who's a bully, now shouldn't you be condemned?
Yeah.
And
who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him?
Exactly.
You know, like exactly. It becomes a circular argument where just because you have rationalized that what you're doing is righteous doesn't make it righteous at all.
Well, it's the old World War II thing. Killing is bad. It's a mortal sin.
Let's go kill some
But
people about it.
should we have then said, no, we're not going to take up arms against Hitler?
Yeah.
I mean, and the people who did go into battle and kill people that they didn't even know, was that good or bad?
Yeah.
Were they fighting for good or were they doing evil?
Who's the baddies?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's still not. It's
and
still
because
wrong
we
to
won,
kill.
we're the ones who get. Yeah, because
Yeah.
we were the ones who won. We are the ones who think we were righteous in our justification.
Exactly.
And in a lot of regards too, like, not saying that what Hitler did wasn't wrong, because it was. Like, he was committing atrocities. But honestly, going into that war, we didn't even know that. We had no idea
Well, and
the extent of what it was.
if you dig deep, there was a lot of anti-Semitism in this country at
Yes,
that time.
and eugenics was approved as a normal scientific means of finding good partners.
And that's another thing where eugenics got started from a desire to find, when we started learning about how, before we really knew about genetics, we started learning about how breeding and stuff can result in continuing diseases passed from generation to generation, and we wanted to get control of that. Nobody wants their baby to be born with something that's going to kill them in 2 years.
There,
Yeah, but nobody wants to have their baby born with some disease that's going to kill them 2 years from now.
Yeah.
If there's some way scientifically that we can prevent that before they get pregnant, we wanted it.
Yes.
But then it went down the road of, okay, what things...
What more can we control by this
What
method?
more can we control, and where do we cross that line where it becomes a bad thing to
And
say...
there was still racism normally in America. So they thought it was normal to be like, you know what, just marry in your own race. Solves a lot of problems. And then eugenics was a thing, and then it got taken by Hitler, and he ran with it too hard and too fast and started genocides.
Yep.
Because that's what he felt like doing.
But it started out as a good thing, to try and reduce certain passed along diseases and traits that would cause people to live in pain or even die really young.
Again, the two wolves came together, and they were fighting, because it's... And that, I think, is just a normal part of the duality of humanness, is that we aren't perfect, and we are going to have our own biases, and we're going to be wrong, and we're going to fuck up real bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to... It's inevitable to happen in people's lives multiple times, and any amount of scale.
Yeah.
And so, like... I think that's what I love about this story in particular, too, is that it brings up these inner darknesses and how we deal with them. And even that period of running from our inner darkness. And I see that a lot in my own story as a person who grew up in a religious home. We spend all this time running from our inner darkness instead of realizing this is just a part of us.
Yeah.
And we need to be willing to give ourselves grace. And even from a religious perspective, in my family, it's like, how dare I have the audacity not to forgive myself when I believe I have a God who forgives me. A God. How dare I not give myself the grace that a God is willing to give me when I don't deserve it, kind of thing. And I kind of love that about this story, too, because you take that idea of running from this inner darkness, and the second you embrace it and realize, I need to forgive myself for having done this to myself, and then do something about it. And that's what I especially love about this storyline.
Yeah.
Is that he takes it into, not only do I have to accept that I've done this, but now I have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
Which most humans never even get to that point in themselves.
No.
But I love that about this story.
Yeah, it makes for a really great novel and amazingly short.
Yes.
So much packed into. It's only like, what, I think 140 pages.
Yeah, it's not a very
book.
long story at all.
It's not very long at all, but there's so much packed into it. And extremely well written. I love her writing style. The characters really come to life. The world comes to life. But I think that's the one criticism, especially from the perspective of what's being done today in fantasy, where a story like this would take 15 books to tell.
Yes, yes.
Well, it's maybe a little too short. She maybe should have made it at least 200 pages.
That's why it's a series.
Well, but I ended this novel thinking, well, okay, story's told. What's she going to do in book 2? I mean, I know there's more that... Yes. She hints that there's more that he's going to go on to.
Yes.
But this is a self-contained story.
It is. It's a great book because you can just read it like it's a novel and there's no other stories and you're done.
You could read this. And, well, she clearly did intend to write a series because there are those hints about the tombs of Atuan and such throughout the book that tells you there is going to be more coming.
Yes.
But you end this book, and my first thought, well, I was extremely curious to know what that would be because it was wrapped up. It was resolved in a way that I was satisfied with.
Yeah.
I won't spoil the ending. It may not be satisfying to everyone because it's not your nice Hollywood ending, but it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
You get closure of a sort. But yes, the rest of the series is as good.
Okay.
I think it's really hard to say that there are authors out there that have sequels that are as good as the first or as good as maybe even the third. Like sometimes when you have those in-between books, it's to fill into the point of the climax of the whole series. And sometimes they're a little weak. I didn't find that with this series at all.
Well, the problem a lot of authors get into with series is they write a book and they intend to publish that book and that's going to be the end of it. And so they do, and that book just takes off, and now the publisher and all the fans are saying, when are you going to write the next one? And they're like, crap, I didn't intend to.
I know, like Tolkien ended up writing Lord... he had the idea for all of it, but The Hobbit was not supposed to be part of it. And so he found a way to swing The Hobbit into the direction so he could actually write the series that he wanted to.
Right.
Which is great. I'm glad they exist. But that does happen to authors a lot, where you're kind of sucked into it, and it's like, okay, now we need more.
It's like Clark's 2001. The original 2001: A Space Odyssey is...
the dead horse.
Well, the other books are interesting, but...
they're not as great as the first one.
The first one really is a standalone book with its own idea. The second one just kind of... reiterates those ideas in a way that's a little more palatable, but then the third one
didn't need to exist.
Well, it was a good story, but it really didn't need to be a part of the 2001 universe.
Yeah.
And then the last one kind of like just pulled the rug out from everything and said, haha, we were just kidding.
Fuck all y'all.
So he was writing these to meet market pressures, publishers that were saying, we need more of these because we're going to make $1 zillion off of it. And so he complied, but he really didn't intend to do more than that one first, and that first book was just a novelization of the screenplay he wrote with Stanley Kubrick.
Yep, pretty much.
It wasn't really a separate novel.
Yes. You won't find that with this series, though.
Yeah.
This everything feels relevant, and
yeah,
it all
she conceived it well. Some of the later books she wrote, the first 3. Were definitely conceived together.
And then the last 2 were...
The last 2 came in later, and she worked those in. It'll be interesting to see how well.
I would not have known that had you not just told me that. In fact, I didn't know that until now. I was today years old when I found that out.
Okay.
It feels like all 5 were intended and written, one right after the other.
Okay, well,
so it's very seamless.
Could be the sign of just a really, really good writer.
It could be. It could be that she had plans for all 5, but only got agreed to by 3, and then the next 2, she's like, I'm just going to do it. We need to do this, and made them happen.
She has an introduction in here where she does explain that, I think it was the 4th one, was written years later,
Mm-hmm.
and she wanted to focus more on a woman's story in
Yes.
it, because she had, in her personal life, she had gotten closer to feminism than
Yep.
she was when she wrote the first three.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the first three, the main character is a
Is
guy,
Sarah Hart. Yeah.
because that's what you did in the 1960s.
Yep.
You
And
know?
then the last ones are with that female
Yeah,
character.
and so
who's
then she brought in the female
pretty
character
badass.
in order to work her new
Two female
feminist
characters, I
ideas,
think.
okay, into the series,
Mhm.
and make it more relevant for that time period. So they
Ah,
very
but
easily
two
could
and
have.
one make much better sense now.
So those later two could
all a
very
metaphor
easily.
for feminism. There it is.
Okay.
Sorry,
I don't know what
wait
you're
till you read
talking
it. Wait till you read it.
Yeah, but those
You
last
will
two
read
could
it.
very easily have been very disjointed
Mm-hmm.
in the hands of a lesser writer.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and she is not a lesser writer by any means. It all seems
No.
to flow quite seamlessly. And
No.
I literally read all of these. I finished the first one, went right into the next one. It was one
Mhm.
after the other for me.
Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a break because we
That's
got
okay.
other things.
I know
need
we
to
have
do.
so much to get through.
But yeah, in asking you about Sabriel, my interest there, we're currently reading Sir Heward and Mr. Fitz,
Mm-hmm.
a collection of related adult fantasy stories by Garth Nix, and I read the first story so far, and it immediately popped into my head. Fritz Lieber, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. You probably don't know that.
I have no idea what that is.
It's a whole fantasy series that started with Lieber's first professional sale,
Mm-hmm.
a story called Two Sawed Adventure in Unknown magazine, which was the companion to Astounding in 1939.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a story where you have a knight type character, and the Grey Mouser is more like a thief,
Mm-hmm.
and they're headed into the woods looking for jewels that
Ah.
are supposed to be at this house. And they get there, and the house is protected by all kinds of magic. And so they
Mm.
have to try and get in and get the jewels. Nobody has ever successfully got in and got out alive.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
The
So-
first story gave you those. Yeah, I see where that would give
So
you those
there's, I mean, the first story in Sir Heward and Mr. Fitz are, you know, it's not like Nix is copying Lieber,
vibes.
but I can see where it's very inspired by
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't
Fafhrd and Grey
say.
Mouser.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Earthsea and Sabriel have very much in common at all.
Okay.
No,
Yeah,
not even at all.
Now, I'm far from a fantasy expert, but Earthsea is unlike anything I've read so far.
Yeah.
Um,
Just you wait. We'll get you into
It
more.
does have some of the, you know, in being short and in the way she writes, it has a lot of that old mythic storytelling type tradition that
Mhm.
runs through earlier fantasy that you get in some of the ancient texts like the Iliad and the Odyssey
Mhm.
and Gilgamesh, and you can see some of that in the Lord of the Rings, that
Mhm.
storytelling mythic tradition
Mhm.
runs through a lot of fairy tales and such.
Yeah.
And so I see that style coming in, but you have this whole new thing about that focus on the inner, and about that wizard school that
Mhm.
nobody that I know of had done that at that time.
Mhm.
So, and those of you who think Harry Potter invented it, no.
Dark Academia's been around a lot longer.
Yeah. And you know, the writing style, it's down to earth style, but you
It's
can tell
crafted.
that it's crafted. It is
Mhm.
word crafted very well. It doesn't come across like poetry, but her words are carefully chosen to
Yes.
give the whole thing
Every
that
phrase is
mythic
intentional.
epic feel.
Mm-hmm. Every phrase is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's all I have to say about it. Honestly, read it.
The imagination is
So
incredible.
good.
Yes.
So good. And read the whole series if you can. None of the books are super large. Like
No.
this is the omnibus of all
This
of
is
it.
everything.
This is all of
She
it.
wrote a bunch of short stories.
And this is 5
and
books. Like
5 novels.
5 novels
and
in here.
there's
They're
some
not long.
essays in here. This is a
Mhm.
huge book, so
Yeah.
yeah, this
Like
is
they had to beef it
everything.
up with essays.
This is like a
Honestly.
whole writer's career here.
Yes.
Except
Yes.
she did do a lot of other stuff. But
She did, but this is a lot. It really is a reasonable amount of time to get through the 5-book
Yeah.
series.
yeah, very,
It's really
very short,
short and fun, and you'll enjoy it.
engaging. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And way better than what I've read of current fantasy so far.
It's uncomparable. There's no comparing.
Yeah, I mean, I love Garth Nix, and Sanderson is okay, Sarah J. Maas is okay, but no, their writing style just totally falls apart.
It's
in
plain
comparison.
language and kind of bad language at that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little higher literature and feels right. This is what you read when you want to read fantasy.
Yeah.
It'll ruin all the other fantasies for you, but that's fine. You don't need more.
Most people who've read this that are into other fantasy, and they read a lot of other stuff too and like it, but I don't know, I haven't explored all that yet.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get you there. You'll enjoy it.
We'll see.
Well, that's all I got.
Okay, yeah, we should conclude this before the
It's been
camera
a while.
stops.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Like and subscribe. We're almost to 500 subscribers as of the making of this video. So we are trying to get to a raffle that we're going to do to give away a limited edition dust jacketed Edgar Allan Poe book.
This is the
And
book
maybe
we're
a
working
little
with.
more. It is
I
the
am-
Complete Stories and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. It's a 19...
She did some illustrations. I'm doing the graphic design with them and creating a custom dust jacket and end papers. Let's see, there's no end papers. I'm going to make this a one-of-a-kind spectacular, and somebody out there is going to win it, but you won't have a chance to enter the raffle until we reach that 500 subscribers. So encourage your friends to subscribe to us. If you aren't subscribed to us, hit that subscribe button and hit the like button while you're there too.
And then once we hit our 500 subscribers, keep an eye out on our social media. We will give you the details of the giveaway. So thanks for joining us again, guys. We'll see you next time.